Last session, we talked about the effects of trauma and how it is so devastating. I would like to compare trauma to being like in a time machine because it's going to take you back. It reminds me of that Frank Stallone song, do 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 do, take me back, because trauma is going to take you back. See, something is going to happen that's going to remind you of a traumatic event that happened in your past. It could be someone hitting you from behind, and that event caused you to feel like somebody was attacking you. It's taking you back to that rape that took place 20 years ago. Trauma is like that record player that keeps looping and looping and looping because there's a scratch on the record. Now, some of you are not old enough to have played the records. You don't play records anymore. But if you are familiar with how a record player works, it is rotating, and because the scratch prevents it from moving forward. Here's my point. Chains of your past prevents progress. Progression is the name of the game. We have to declothe ourselves from the trauma of the past so we can evolve to be the people that God has called us to be. It prevents you from moving forward. Here's my philosophy. Here's the magic. This is how those who are trained in dealing with trauma, the best, whether it's EMDR, rapid resolution therapy, this is what the modalities, the therapies are really designed to do. This is my philosophy. There is a wrong perspective that is creating a wrong interpretation. That wrong interpretation is leading to your stuckness. So there has to be a right perspective that will lead to a right interpretation. And that right interpretation will release you from the chains that hold you in your past. I don't know if you remember the movie in Lion King where Simba is under this emotional bondage because he has this false guilt. He thinks he is the cause of his father's death, but it was his uncle Scar who was the cause. He set it up. But in Simba's mind, he had the wrong perspective, which led to the wrong interpretation, which put him in an emotional bondage. So what we see is once he was able to understand, once he had a right perspective, it led to a right interpretation, which freed him to be the next king. That's the name of the game. So I was doing some work with an individual. She had flown from out of town, and she was perfectly fine. But apparently something changed. And like that, she began to experience fainting, headaches, and she was hospitalized. And she was wondering what in the world is going on. So meeting with her, I am trying to find what is the wrong perspective that's leading to a wrong interpretation that's leading you to this bondage. Doing some in-depth understanding of this individual, she began to tell me about how her father was abusive. Now, he wasn't abusive all the time, but abuse doesn't have to be all the time. It only takes one time. And during this one time when the father was aggressive, overly aggressive, he spanked her in such an aggressive way that it left a mark on her body. When she went to school, they called CPS. CPS then took her out of the home and put her into foster care. That was a very traumatic experience. So now she is some 15 years down the road, and her husband is in the military. He comes home and says, honey, they are sending us to another state. We don't have an option. And then she breaks down. About 2 weeks after that information, that's when she started to experience all these symptoms. So how we talked about last week, that trauma will lead to pain because trauma is housed in the body. And so now we're processing the wrong perspective that led to the wrong interpretation. See, she went back to her childhood. She went back, time machine, back to age 15 when she was taken from her family. It was a very traumatic thing. She didn't know what she was going to. She had no choice. So now, some 15 years later, she is set up with the same type of situation. She's saying she's got to move and she don't have a choice. There's a time machine. And so EMDR, rapid resolution therapy, these therapies are designed to really find what is that wrong perspective that leads into that wrong interpretation and addressing that thing so we can release you from that emotional past. See you next time.